Recently, Apple updated their 13-inch MacBook Pro line for 2020. There are two variants which can be distinguished by whether there are 2 or 4 Thunderbolt ports. The 2-port entry-level model starts at $1,300 US. This model sports a 1.4 GHz quad-core 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor which will turbo up to 3.9 GHz. The entry-level model uses Intel Iris Pro Graphics 645 GPU and has 8 gigabytes of 2.1 gigahertz LPDDR3 memory with 256 gigabytes of solid-state storage. The 4-port high-level model starts at $1,800 US. This model sports a 2 GHz quad-core 10th generation Core i5 processor which will turbo up to 3.8 GHz. The high-end model uses the Intel Iris Plus graphics integrated GPU and has 16 gigabytes of 3.7 GHz LPDDR4X memory with 512 gigabytes of SSD storage. There are some not so obvious differences between the entry and high-end models. First, the high-end model has 2 internal fans for cooling rather than the single fan on the entry-level model. This better cooling system in the high-end model will allow for sustained performance under load. So for example, when rendering video in Final Cut Pro, the high-end model will stay cooler for a longer period of time, allowing the CPU to perform well without temperature throttling. Second, the $1,800 MacBook Pro has 2 subwoofers in its speaker array. The subwoofers significantly enhance bass output and overall sound quality when compared to the entry-level MacBook Pro 13-inch. There are some extra vents beneath the high-end MacBook Pro which may assist in cooling and speaker output. So these are some of the differences between the entry-level 2-port model and the 4-port high-end model. Now let's talk about some similarities between the entry-level and high-end MacBooks Pro. Both models have a 13-inch Retina display with True Tone. Both models also have a Magic Keyboard with 1mm of key travel and a touch bar with Touch ID. There are significant differences in performance between the entry-level and high-end MacBooks Pro. This is due mainly to differences between the processors in each laptop. The entry-level MacBook Pro sports a 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor, where the high-end MacBook Pro uses a 10th gen Intel Core i5 processor, codenamed Ice Lake. This processor is, according to Apple, sporting an 80% faster graphics processor unit or GPU integrated on die with the chip. Geekbench scores for these particular laptops, and meaning the 10th generation laptops, are quite impressive. The 10th generation laptops have single core scores that are 30% greater than the single core scores of the 8th gen laptops. Their multi-core scores are approximately 15% greater than the entry-level MacBook Pros. Interestingly enough, the multi-core scores for the Intel Ice Lake processor in the high-end MacBook Pro is on par with a MacBook Pro from 2018 that is a 15-inch full power laptop. So overall, if I had to give my impressions on this laptop, I would say that the high-end model should be the choice for most people, as it will allow for higher end graphics processing and just generally better performance than the entry level MacBook Pro. However, you can't go wrong with the entry level MacBook Pro either.